Welcome back to CIA Declassified. The year is 1964, and the humidity of Southeast Asia is thick with more than just the scent of rain. It's thick with the smell of industrial oil and the ozone of high voltage power lines. In North Vietnam, the government in Hanoi is racing to modernize, fueled by massive Soviet and Chinese technical aid. Factories, chemical plants, and power stations are the gears of war, providing the electricity and material that keep the Southern insurgency alive. But the CIA had a plan to strip those gears. This wasn't about a massive bombing run that could trigger a global nuclear standoff. This was about the quiet pop, the subtle, untraceable failure of a critical component that looks like an accident but is actually a calculated strike. This was the world of JGBURN. We are examining the precise moment when the agency realized that a wrench used at the right time in the right place was more effective than a 1,000-pound bomb. Why JGBURN? In the internal logic of the agency's cryptonym system, the prefix JG was assigned to projects involving technical sabotage and industrial disruption during the Vietnam era. The suffix burn was a literal reference to the primary method of the sabotage, thermal overload, and the burning out of heavy machinery through controlled mechanical failure. It was a name that described exactly what happened to a boiler when the water feed was cut. It burned until it burst. JGBURN was the agency's master class in infrastructure interdiction. To understand the scope of this mechanical war, we have to look at the sheer volume of declassified evidence. Here is the technical reality of the operation, intermixed with the voices of those who planned it. JGBURN was a CIA-sanctioned operation to infiltrate North Vietnamese industrial sites with specialized low-visibility sabotage teams. A quote from a declassified 1966 memo. The objective is not total destruction, but the introduction of systemic instability. We want the enemy to spend more time repairing their equipment than using it. End quote. Logs show that the agency developed corrosive lubricants, oils that looked normal but would eat through steel bearings over 100 hours of operation. Records confirm that JGBURN assets targeted the Thai Nguyen steel plant, attempting to induce thermal shock in the blast furnaces. A quote from a declassified field report: "A single grain of sand in the right gear is more effective than a 1,000-pound bomb on the wrong roof." End quote. The operation utilized limpet drums, small explosive devices shaped like standard industrial valves that were swapped onto steam lines by bribed workers. Documentation proves that the CIA analyzed the blueprints of every major Soviet-built turbine in the north to find critical vulnerability points. The program recruited local laborers in Haiphong to forget to lubricate specific heavy lift cranes used for offloading military cargo. Quote from a declassified 1968 SOG report: "The industrial failure in Zone 4 was interpreted by local cadres as a failure of Soviet manufacturing rather than Western intervention." End quote. Records show that the agency smuggled faulty replacement parts into the North Vietnamese supply chain via third-party traders in Hong Kong. Logs indicate that the operation used micro-aerosols to clog the air filtration systems of underground command bunkers in Hanoi. Records prove the agency conducted simulated failures at U.S. power plants to verify how long it would take for an engineer to diagnose the sabotage. A quote from a declassified 1966 briefing note: "In the war of the future, the computer will be the valve, but today, the valve is our only computer." End quote. Documentation shows that JGBURN coordinated with the SOG, Studies and Observations Group, for the insertion of technical teams. Internal ledgers confirm the agency spent millions developing non-magnetic tools for agents to use when working near high-voltage electrical arrays. Records indicate that the operation's primary in-place assets were often lower-level maintenance staff who were overlooked by counterintelligence. Records show the CIA created sabotage manuals disguised as technical repair guides for Soviet machinery. Internal files reveal the operation attempted to induce harmonic resonance in bridge supports by attaching small vibrating motors. Documentation proves the agency monitored the repair cycles of North Vietnamese factories to strike exactly when the spare parts were at their lowest. Logs show the use of ablative coats on electrical wires that would cause them to short circuit only when the humidity reached exactly 10%. Internal memos prove that JGBURN shared data with the Air Force to ensure bombing runs didn't destroy factories already being sabotaged. Records prove the operation utilized chemical catalyst added to coal piles to decrease the efficiency of power plant boilers by 30%. Logs show the agency intercepted Soviet shipping manifests to identify which industrial plants were receiving sensitive high-tech equipment. Internal reports show that JGBURN technicians experimented with abrasive additives in grease to ensure gear seizing within 48 hours. The CIA maintained a clandestine warehouse in Thailand to stage pre-aged Soviet-style components weakened by structural fatigue. Records confirm that technical saboteurs were required to memorize the mechanical tolerances of every turbine in the Wang Bi power plant. The agency utilized isotopic analysis of soot from factory chimneys to determine if catalyst had been burned. Documentation shows the CIA created Project Counter Repair, leaving deliberately flawed repair tools behind for enemy engineers. Internal ledgers prove that JGBURN utilized pheromone attractants to lure tropical vermin into electrical switch boxes. Logs prove the agency tracked the metabolic rates of factory workers to determine the best time for a dark insertion. Records show the CIA utilized liquid nitrogen sprays to embrittle critical steel supports on railway bridges. Documentation confirms the agency spent $2.5 million on the development of synthetic rust to age hardware instantly. Records confirm that JGBURN identified a single point of failure in fertilizer production that guaranteed a 20% crop failure. The agency deployed acoustic simulators to mimic the sound of failing bearings, tricking the North into unnecessary shutdowns. JGBURN teams utilized disappearing ink for technical sketches that would self-destruct in sunlight. The agency mapped out the precise acoustic signature of Soviet blast furnaces to detect cooling molten metal. Records prove the CIA utilized liquid solder to permanently jam the internal gears of the North's only heavy-duty typewriter factory. The operation included the deployment of static generators inside of fuel trucks to cause spontaneous combustion during offloading. Documentation shows that JGBURN used porous metal fillings to slowly degrade the compression levels of heavy diesel generators. The agency conducted a secret study on the vibrational fatigue of North Vietnamese hydroelectric dam turbines. Internal files confirm that JGBURN assets were given dental encapsulated radio transmitters for emergency signaling. Logs show the CIA analyzed the lubricant viscosity required for the North's rail network to ensure corrosive spread. The operation developed brittle wiring that would snap only when subjected to specific RPMs of a Soviet standard generator. CIA labs produced sugar-based glass for surveying equipment, causing them to melt during the monsoon season. Records show that JGBURN used magnetic sand in cooling vents to create untraceable internal arcs. The agency utilized hollowed-out coal to transport microfilmed instructions into the Hongai mining facility. Internal memos confirm the agency studied the thermal expansion coefficients of bridge steel to time attacks for peak heat. The operation employed clockwork delay timers that were purely mechanical, avoiding electronic detection. Documentation proves JGBURN established a front technical library in Switzerland to leak modified blueprints to students. Records indicate the CIA used chemicals to make insulation brittle and flammable. The operation proved that a 10% reduction in industrial power output led to a 40% reduction in military rail transport speed. Records confirm that the agency studied the internal cooling cycles of the Takba hydroelectric plant to identify where a single ounce of liquid gallium could destabilize the turbine casing. Logs show that JGBURN utilized specialized barium-doped fuels in local supply trucks to track their movements via high-altitude sensors. The operation established a secret metal lab in the Philippines to test the failure rates of counterfeit Soviet-grade ball bearings. Internal documents prove the CIA utilized inductive heating coils hidden in transport crates to weaken the structural integrity of metal beams during rail transport. Records show the agency mapped the electrical grid of Haiphong to determine how a single localized short could trigger a citywide blackout. Documentation reveals the use of low-frequency infrasound to induce nausea and disorientation in North Vietnamese factory guards during nighttime insertions. The program utilized synthetic polymer sprays that would react with industrial coolant to turn it into a thick engine-clogging sludge. Reports show the CIA utilized electrostatic dischargers to ignite the dust in North Vietnamese grain silos, mimicking natural accidents. Technical logs confirm the agency produced pyrophoric dust that would spontaneously ignite when exposed to the high-velocity airflow of a jet engine intake. Records prove the CIA tracked the electrical phase noise of the Hanoi power grid to time the remote triggering of circuit breakers. Documentation shows the agency developed a self-welding grease that would fuse gears together permanently if they reached a temperature of 200 degrees. Internal files confirm the use of X-ray fluorescence to verify the purity of metal in sabotaged parts from a distance. Logs show the agency intercepted Soviet technical advisors' mail to insert corrected, actually flawed, engineering formulas. Records prove the CIA utilized ultrasonic emulsifiers to separate oil and water in fuel storage tanks, causing engine stalls across the transport fleet. Documentation confirms the development of magnetic pulse briefcases designed to wipe the magnetic tapes of early Soviet-built industrial computers. Internal memos show the agency analyzed the resonant frequency of North Vietnamese concrete smokestacks to induce structural cracks during minor seismic events. If you go to the National Security Archive and pull the declassified files for JGBURN, you will find a massive information graveyard. The most significant redactions occur in the section titled Projected Civilian Impact Analysis 1967. We're talking about over 400 pages that are almost entirely blacked out, leaving researchers with nothing but the header. The Dark City Conspiracy. Some whisper that these blacked out pages hide a total grid kill protocol. The theory suggests the CIA didn't just target mechanics in machines. They had a plan to trigger a cascading failure that would have permanently blacked out the entire North, effectively sending them back to the Stone Age. The redactions likely cover the moral and legal debate over a strike that would have crippled hospitals, water sanitation, and civilian life on a scale that many consider a war crime. Then there's the radiological rumor. There's a persistent, darker theory that the redactions hide a micronuclear sabotage study. Some believe the agency looked into placing tiny radioactive markers or even dirty bomb components inside industrial furnaces to ensure that once a plant failed, the machinery would be too hot, literally, for Soviet technicians to ever repair. The ink hides the fallout projections that eventually made the plan too hot for the White House to sign off on. Then there's the mole purge gambit. Certain historical skeptics believe the redactions hide a much more sinister double agent purge. This theory posits that the CIA used JGBURN as a giant trap, feeding fake sabotage targets to suspected moles with their own network. The black blocks likely hide the names of loyal assets who were knowingly sent to their deaths behind enemy lines just to confirm a leak in the agency's own security. Then there's the chrono-vibration protocol. The most out there theory, circulating in the dark corners of the web, suggests the redacted pages hide experiments with temporal vibration harmonics. This wild speculation claims the agency discovered a way to vibrate steel at its molecular aging frequency, literally causing decades of structural fatigue to happen in a matter of hours. Adherents believe the blacked out pages contain the horrifying side effects on the human operators who were caught within the harmonic field during the test. And then there is the inorganic virus theory. Deep in the foreign basements, a new theory is gaining steam, the smart dust conspiracy. It claims the 400 missing pages detail the release of self-replicating mechanical catalyst, essentially a primitive non-electronic nanobot made of reactive chemicals. The theory goes that the agency released a substance that would infect metal surfaces, slowly turning hardened steel into a brittle ceramic-like powder through a chain reaction that the redactions are still predicting today. Was JGBURN a success? Tactically, it was a consistent success. It successfully delayed infrastructure repair and diverted thousands of enemy troops. Strategically, it was a diminished return. It ground the gears but didn't halt the war effort entirely. However, the operation was a massive success in operational innovation, proving that industrial sabotage is a viable alternative to kinetic strikes. The agency successfully identified that technical paranoia is a powerful destabilization tool. It was an objective success in supply chain deception, forcing the North to shift to hand-manufactured wooden parts for rail cars. It successfully proved that the CIA could achieve strategic delay without full-scale industrial war. Furthermore, it was a success in physical attrition, with repair cost exceeding sabotage cost by 40 to 1. It was factually a success in intelligence cross-pollination, allowing the Navy to identify cargo ships by their specific engine hum. It successfully turned the factory floor into a battlefield and proved that the laws of physics are the ultimate double agent. The operation was an objective success in supply chain deception, as evidenced by the North's desperate shift to hand-manufactured wooden parts for rail cars. It successfully demonstrated that low-intensity strikes could have high-intensity psychological effects on the enemy's workforce. The mission successfully mapped the industrial DNA of a hostile nation for the first time in modern history. Ultimately, it was a success because it forced the enemy to doubt their own modern tools and their allies' manufacturing quality. The operation was a success because it allowed for the collection of high-fidelity vibrational intelligence that would be used to track Soviet machinery globally for the next 3 decades. It was a success in deterrence modeling, as it showed foreign powers that their most advanced industrial assets were never truly beyond the agency's reach. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs are concerned, the gears of war resulted in breakthroughs that define modern industrial security today, such as industrial control system vulnerability mapping. The mapping of Soviet turbines led to modern cyber-physical systems security, protecting today's power grids from hackers. Smart lubricant technology. Corrosive lubricants evolved into tracer fluids used to detect leaks in modern oil pipelines and aerospace engines. Remote acoustic diagnostics. Engine note sensors led to modern predictive maintenance AI that forecasts machine failure before it happens. And harmonic structural analysis. Resonance experiments on bridges led to the field of seismic engineering, allowing modern skyscrapers to tune their vibration against earthquakes. JGBURN reminds us that the machine is only as strong as its smallest part. The sabotage valves of the 1960s became the case studies for the cyber warriors of the 21st century. We are still living in the world shaped by these mechanical missteps. Every smart grid grid protection is a reaction to the manual disasters of the past. The story of JGBURN is a story of the agency learning that the most effective way to win a war is to make the enemy's own tools turn against them. The legacy of those who turned the pressure valves in the dark remains a silent warning to anyone who thinks their infrastructure is secure. Every modern factory that utilizes real-time monitoring owes its security to the mechanical mayhem perfected under the humid skies of North Vietnam. It is a certainty that the ghost of JGBURN inhabit the logic of modern malware. The heart of an empire can be stopped with a single well-placed turn of a screw. This operation proved that the most vulnerable part of any superpower is the infrastructure it takes for granted. It established the physical layer of intelligence as a primary theater of war. The lessons learned in those boiling North Vietnamese factory rooms are now encoded into the very DNA of global industrial defense. We now understand that the true front line of a nation is not its borders, but its circuit breakers. Every time an industrial engineer performs a stress test on a new turbine, they are inadvertently honoring the shadow legacy of JGBURN. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and remember, if the pressure is rising, someone might be turning the valve. Join us next time as we examine J.M. Slow. In the hallowed out halls of international academia, the agency planted the ultimate long-term asset. We'll uncover the facts behind J.M. Slow, the policy for sleeper agents embedded in foreign universities. It was a game of intellectual infiltration. Join us next time for the academic shadow. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.